the fourth branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. Welcome. Marcus Cicero, a Roman philosopher, said that any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot persists in his error. You see, pointing fingers is the easiest exercise that mankind has discovered. As such, no matter what it is, no matter what the problem is, it is very easy for one individual to point fingers to the other individual as being responsible for the problem. But ironically, when it is something good, the individual in question will claim credit without any need for anyone to point fingers to him or her. Here at the fourth branch, we have dedicated this program exclusively to address socio-political issues which impacts our lives and quite possibly lives of future generations. In other words, we only address issues that have such wide impact. Although we cannot avoid the idea of discussing politics, social, political, but the main objective is not to debate between Democrats and Republicans. It's not to take a side of either Democrats or Republicans, but rather to take the sides of common sense and explore possibilities for solution about particular problem. The past 2 years in particular, we have been pointing fingers to the state of our country. We have said repeatedly that our democracy is in serious jeopardy. And a couple of months ago, we have added to our program the topic of race relations. And since then, those two major topics have been pretty much what constitutes this program, the fourth branch. The ultimate objective of the program, as we mentioned in announcement and several times, is to reach or to perfect the union. And one of the major obstacle to that is ignorance. We know it's not an easy task because most of the time, as we pointed out many times before, the ignorant are ignorant of their own ignorance, which make the task of looking at opportunities, presenting solution to problem all the more difficult. How can you accept a cure for an illness you completely reject to suffer of? Impossible. The first step is to acknowledge that there is a problem. Now, we do not pause here as individuals who have the solution to every problem. Far from it. But what we have is a great deal of common sense and being able to remove all the noises noise of politics and come up with a way, or at least looking through the prism of the future, of the future generations. We have no stake in this. In other words, we do not have any personal agenda. Our ultimate objective is repeated many times here on the fourth branch and in various announcements, that is for the perfection of the union. And we also acknowledge that from time to time we will have one side agreeing with us, the other side completely baffled or bashing everything that we do. And in other times, just the opposite would be true. But regardless of which position you take at which particular time for whatever topic is in discussion, it does not make any difference to us. The only thing we ask of anyone who watches this program is to become part of the solution. As you see many times, and in almost every screen that we have, is become part of the solution or get out of the way. Because we also understand that not everybody will want to be part of the solution. Not everybody cares to be part of the solution. In fact, many have already expressed their sentiment. Many have already taken a position against the very idea of debating topics they do not agree with, especially race relations. What we hope to achieve is to leave a better world for future generations, for our children and our grandchildren, contrary to those who have an agenda or who have some goals, some grand objective, either to become a politician or to grab the spotlight. We at the fourth branch, we have a very simple goal: to perfect the union by removing the biggest obstacle, which is ignorance. Yes, we already mentioned that we know it is not an easy task, but for the sake of the future generations, for the sake of our country, it is something that we will continue to do until we breathe our last breath. I'll be right back. I am MD, host of the fourth branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand the topics of legislations. The fourth project is not associated with any political party, and we at the fourth branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. we continue the conversation about race relation. And of course, the second topic, as mentioned earlier, is to debate the state of our country, more particularly the fact that our democracy is in jeopardy. Now, we will continue the conversation up to the point that there was a civil war which was engaged by two major divisions in the country. We know that the civil war didn't start because we were attacked by any external forces, but rather among ourselves we had such major disagreement about a very sensitive aspect of our history, which is slavery. Now, before we continue the conversation, we were up to the point where we were showing the three important individuals during the Civil War. I was Robert Lee, Jefferson Davis, and of course we were at the point of discussing Abraham Lincoln. We'll do a short recap for that, but let's take a quick look at as to the road we have taken in order to get to this point. First, slavery. Blacks were rounded from Africa and shipped all over the world as slaves. Here in America, the first shipment of slavery happened in 1619 in a town in Virginia called Jamestown. And since then, black lives, have never been the same. They have gone through terrible tortures, inhuman treatment, humiliation, and aspect of their life that it is even difficult to read about, let alone live through or experience. Now, I have made it almost a prayer to bring to the surface in the discussion a fact in this country, which is that there are two large groups of whites in the country. There are whites who are racist and who discriminate. And there are whites who are not racist, who do not discriminate. And this is not something just today. Even during slavery, there were thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of whites across the nation who were strategizing, looking at ways to put an end to slavery. At the same time, as expected, there were as many whites who were fighting to keep slavery around. And that's what gonna provoke, that's what gonna be the factor, the main factor, the main catalyst. That's what gonna trigger the Civil War. Because one group say no to slavery and the other group say yes to slavery. That's the way it has always been in the United States of America. In other words, there have always been very decent individual whites who look at each individual, black or white, through the prism of mankind. And there have always been that other group, whites, who look at blacks as inferior, as deserving less, and so on and so forth. And even up to today, we have nothing has changed in regard to those two groups. And that's the reason we continue to cope with something that should have been completely gone, racism that is, but we continue to cope with that aspect of life, at least for blacks. Now, during slavery, many whites across the country languished over this predicament. How could we, mankind, human beings, treat others the way that white slave owners in the South were treated black? And before we even get to the Civil War, we presented to you someone who managed to get others, white, to join a fight in order to end slavery. That wasn't the Civil War. That was prior, actually 2 years before the Civil War started. That was John Brown. Which means we've always have in the United States of America decent individuals and those who want to consider themselves, who want to put the nice label on themselves, like Christians, conservative, defenders of the Republic, and so on and so forth. As you see today, we still continue to have the same approach. The people the people who like to call themselves, who like to embrace great positive labels, you don't have to look far. They the one who have the worst kind of who behind the scene doing the worst kind of actions against mankind. During slavery, white slave owners, every Sunday or whatever religion they belong to, they would take their whole families and went to church. As far as they were concerned, they were Christian. Committing those atrocities, those crimes. So people who actually do the worst things in life, they always want to cover themselves over labels like Christian, labels are easy way of pretending to belong to a group. As I mentioned many times here, I don't care that what you call yourself. Your actions will tell me who and what you really are. Telling me you're not racist, good for you if you're not. But the actions, and even the Bible, the very Bible that those individuals have embraced in order to portray themselves as Christian, the same Bible been very clear about that. Words without actions are worth absolutely nothing. Maybe they missed that passage in the Bible. But ironically, even up to today, those individuals that they call liberals, as if they indecent people, they immoral people, those are usually the people who understand that they cannot do those type of evil things to others. Ironic, isn't it? The very people that they consider who do not have the right degree of, or the right amount of morality, those are usually the people that come to rescue the country from those individuals who pretend to be. So it should be no surprise to anyone in the United States of America to learn that those people who were fighting to keep slavery around call themselves Christian. Yes, they call themselves Christian. And yet, their actions were worse than the devil. How do you reconcile those two things? Now, when we come back, we will continue with the discussion about Abraham Lincoln and show you the base, the foundation that was being set with that bridge that we're about to cross. Because the Civil War we cannot look at the Civil War as just something that we left behind and then we should never talk about that, or we can only read about it, or at school they can talk about it a little bit and then forget about that. There are thousands of books written about slavery in general, and hundreds of books about the Civil War. And those are not just exercise of writing. Those accounts are left behind for us for a reason. If we cannot learn from the past, we are condemned to repeat it in the future. As it stands today, we have not learned a thing when it comes to race relation. What a surprise. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on Blacks is a new topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relations in America. The goal is trifold. One, to bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discriminations, and racism in the country. Two, to expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. Three, to extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussion of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther Jr. said, nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Abraham Joshua exclaimed, racism is man's gravest threat to man. The maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason. Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. Topic which discuss the race relations in America. Now, in order to understand why in mid of 21st century we still talk about racism, we still talk about discrimination, we took a trip to the past. We started during slavery to understand how that particular sentiment has crossed the bridge of the Civil War and continued to haunt the country. Now, if you pause for a moment, you don't have to be a genius to understand that this very simple aspect of life. If you stop for just one moment and look at things from a human perspective, you don't have to be Christian. You actually don't have to have a college education in order to understand that what was the type, even the idea of chasing individuals to enslave them, that idea alone should give any individual, anyone with an average level of intelligence, pause as to how in the world can someone at any point in time justify that the idea of chasing people from their own country, capture them, chain them, and sold them across the world as merchandise. The very idea itself, if you just stop for a moment, today we're fighting human trafficking, where young adults, especially girls, being kidnapped, disappear, and become slave of sort, sex slaves. And we deplore that, and our government across the world have allocated resources in order to fight, to combat that aspect of how in the world that today, even up to today, we still have individuals who continue the practice. Now we can say that not that it's okay, but we can say that those individuals, not only they're far few in between, but they operating on the fringe, and they also behind the scene. They're not doing any of that as if it's okay to do. That's how much we as a society have condemned the idea of human trafficking. And yet, during slavery time, individuals who consider themselves successful individuals, who went to school, who went to college, or but worse, who went to church, could not understand that was wrong, that was devilish, that was Machiavellian. No one could see that as being wrong. And there were many, many, many times that light bulb should have come up. People subjected to the type of treatment were fleeing the scene, were burning the plantation. Those people were in sort of retaliating against those type of treatment. But no time that those individuals who call themselves Christian, no time that the Holy Ghost ever spoke to them and say, gosh, those are God's creatures. Of course not. At no time. They went to church, neither the pastor nor the priest had the foresight, divine revelation that was not okay. No, of course not. Now, even if you were to give the benefit of the doubt to all those individuals, millions of them, completely ignorant of the fact that they were doing something wrong, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt for now. That you had millions of white slave owners who had no idea enslaving people was wrong. Even saying it sounds weird. But for sake of this conversation, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They had no idea. They were completely ignorant that, well, it was okay because, hey, everybody was doing it. Actually not true. Now, when the time came, again, we operating under this weird idea that they had no concept whatsoever they were doing enslaving people was wrong. But when Abraham Lincoln came and decided that let's put an end to that, still no light bulb. Despite the fact there were half of the country that was already against it, and there were thousands and thousands of whites campaigning to try to put an end to that. Never mind any of that. But when the President of the United States signed an executive order for the emancipation of slaves, you would have thought that, hey, gosh, maybe we're doing something wrong. No, that's not what happened. Instead, they decided, let's just split from that country so that we can keep our slaves. Yes, those are people, and I want to put emphasis on that, because time and time again, when I have conversation with individuals who want to portray themselves as having this level of morality, this level of decency, and yet their actions tell you that even the devil would look better than they. And yes, we do that here because the idea is this is not a beauty contest. This is not a contest to get as many people as possible. Only those who want to be part of the solutions. We're not looking for a crowd of useless individuals. We're only interested in people who have the decency, the understanding that you do something wrong, you acknowledge that you have, and you do something to redress that. If you're not at that level, it does not matter much, because we do not need a crowd in order to solve the problem of this United States. It always takes a small group of people. Now, there is no doubt that the more people would want to be part of the solution, the better it would be, but this is not the goal. Because we already found out that millions of white slave owners in the South did not have the mind, the knowledge, the understanding. In other words, they were ignorant of the fact that what they were doing was not only wrong, but completely evil. And yet, they continue to do it, while they continue to think of themselves as Christian. No, you were not Christian. There was nothing Christian about an individual who enslaved another individual and treated that individual the way that white slave owners treated blacks. There is nothing Christian about it. Now, when Abraham Lincoln decided it is time that we put an end to that, the people in the South, those who think of themselves as Christian, they decided to split from the United States so that they can create their own country, which would embrace slavery. Yes, the Christian, the great Christian of the South. They split. There were many Confederate states. The image on your screen is giving you a sense as to those states who were for slavery. The red are the Confederate States. The pink were states in the Union, but which allow slavery. Kind of interesting mix though, because if you recall, the Union was the whole Civil War was between the Union and the Confederate States. And also the Civil War was about ending slavery. So that was kind of an interesting twist in this whole thing, because the pink state, allowed slavery, but at the same time they joined the Union to fight to put an end to slavery. Abraham Lincoln decided that no, this treatment of human being is not acceptable. So he went to war for a decent reason, for a noble reason. While those white slave owners in the South who claimed to be Christian decided to fight against the Union states in order to keep slavery around. Pause for a moment and think it through and decide in your mind. This is the legacy that you, if you are a white individual whose ancestors were slave owners, that's your legacy. But that's not all they left for you. I understand that they left wealth as well, land, houses, businesses. They send you to school. You had a great life while your ancestors, now I use the word you loosely because I mentioned several times here before that we know that you weren't around when slavery, even when by the time that slavery ended. I know that you weren't around. Your great grandpa was. We're preparing a comparison of individuals between the slave owners and the slaves to show you the predicament blacks are in today. It's not of their making. Society has put blacks in the predicament that they're in today. So when you see the banner War on Blacks, it is not meant to be sensational. No, it is not. It's meant to convey the idea that there have been casualties, many casualties, from slavery time to today. And that's what war brings, casualties. Usually in a war, you have casualties on all sides, both sides. But on the War on Blacks, the casualties have been, for the most part, lopsided. Blacks mostly have been the victims of that war. Now, millions of whites put their lives on the line to fight to keep slavery around. Thank goodness, millions of whites decided to put their lives also on the line to end slavery. And look at the contrast. Those who were fighting to end slavery, they were just whites only. Yes, there were quite a few slaves that they were forcing to participate in their fight because they didn't have enough manpower. But notice I said forced. But on the other side, the Union side, both blacks and whites joined forces to fight to put an end to slavery. They were not forced on the Union side. We will debate, or at least present information as to what that bridge, that Civil War bridge, the type of horrific outcomes of having to cross that bridge in our history. It was the Civil War bridge is not an easy bridge to cross. And you will begin to understand why racism, discrimination, prejudice, very rampant in America even today. But as promised, as long as we have life, we will continue to fight to eradicate racism, discrimination in America for the sake of our children, for the sake of our grandchildren. Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth French program. War on Blacks is a new topic added to the Fourth French programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relations in America. The goal is trifold. One, to bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discriminations, and racism in the country. Two, to expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. Three, to extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussion of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then will we as a society, be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther Jr. said, Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Abraham Joshua exclaimed, Racism is man's gravest threat to man. The maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason. Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you. The level of ignorance of a people is the most accurate gauge which determines the strength of democracy in that country. The 2016 presidential election, the outcome of the 2016 presidential election taught us a very great lesson. Now, forget the fact that if we look at Donald Trump himself, you could say if he were to be a magician, a performer, you would say he has performed his greatest act ever. Being able to con millions of people to become the 45th president of the United States. And I say the greatest con of all times. And indeed it is the greatest con. The reason we ought to call it a con is because as we getting, it's not that it wasn't obvious to begin with, but as we getting more and more information about how this whole thing happened, it's becoming clearer and clearer that that was the greatest con ever performed by an individual in America. Now, of course, Trump supporter would say, no, I wasn't con. Of course you were. The level of ignorance of a people is the most accurate gauge which determines the strength of democracy in that country. Donald Trump is not a smart man. Everybody knows that. He has very poor vocabulary. And I even gave that exercise to some of the Trump supporters who have been arguing the fact that Donald Trump is smart. Remove Twitter from the equation, Donald Trump would have been the most silent president in the history of the United States. And there is a reason for that. We remove Twitter from the equation. Yes, Donald Trump is not a smart man. He cannot even make a proper sentence. Even when he is presented with everything that a president ought to say, the president is provided with the script. And as we watch Donald Trump, he cannot even stick to a script. He doesn't even have that level of principle in himself. And yet, and that is the sad part for the United States of America, has been conned by Donald Trump. Now, we are currently preparing a document to show you that everything that Donald Trump promised in terms of the economy, in terms of jobs, in terms of this and that, nothing that he promised he would make happen. Bring job back, bring manufacture back, do this and that and the other. And that's what a con man does. The con man, while you're watching this hand, and he's doing his trick with this other hand. That's what those magicians in Las Vegas, they're good at. There is nothing, no such thing as magic. They don't perform any magic. They're just very good. The hands are faster than the eyes. And that is Donald Trump forte. That is his greatest strength. Being able to sell you anything and everything. Donald Trump came into this process campaigning for the presidency of the United States. He doesn't have any knowledge how the government works. And what's worse is he kept everyone who could have helped him away from the whole thing, because con men, as you probably know, those people they call magician, they do not reveal their secrets to people. And that's why we call it magic, because we don't understand how they perform whatever that they perform. Because if they reveal it to us, it's no longer exciting. It's no longer magic. And that's what Donald Trump is good at. Keep everybody out. That's why even his attorney defending him in this very serious problem, even his attorneys do not know what Donald Trump has done, because he doesn't provide them with the information. Today, as you probably know, Donald Trump attorneys are fighting tooth and nail to prevent the Democrat from getting access to his taxes. Now, someone say, this is their argument, that the Democrats, if they get hold of Donald Trump taxes, those taxes will become public. And I'm thinking, what? Isn't it the reason that everybody who bid for the office of the presidency, isn't it the reason that they put their taxes out for the public to see? So what's the problem? What is the problem? Yes, that's supposed to be the case. So what is Donald Trump? Why is Donald Trump? Why would we make an exception for Donald Trump? In fact, Donald Trump conned the country long enough not to put his taxes out. Now, for those who have been defending Donald Trump, they may not see the big problem here. There is nothing at all that's good about Donald Trump. And that's the reason he goes to great length in his private life. If you remember, in his private life, he had attorneys whose primary, principal, and sole job was to keep everything hidden. That was their job, by any means necessary. Drag it. If it goes to court, just drag it off. Because his idea was to prevent anyone from getting access to information that would expose him for who he really is. So Donald Trump performed the greatest con in his life, becoming the 45th president by lying his way all the way to the Oval Office. But what makes the situation even more sad is the fact that individuals, ignorant, gullible, fanatics, people who have no idea, no understanding as to what their support for somebody like that, what kind of damage that does to the country, they continue to do so. it's impossible to come up with a great analogy as to someone who is being killed slowly by another individual, but continue to provide that individual unfettered access to their lives. That's what Trump supporters today, those who claim they are smart, those who claim that they have a college degree, those who claim that they understand, they simply do not. Because no one who has even an average intelligence would continue to support an individual who has not only conned the country, lied to you about everything, but even put the security of the country in jeopardy. Maybe you cannot grasp that part of the concept. Maybe that's why you continue to support Donald Trump. Maybe that's why Donald Trump win the presidency with 40% of the vote of the people in the country. And today, we're still talking about the same percentage of people supporting Donald Trump. But you talk to any of those individuals, they tell you they're no stupid people. They have a college degree. Some of them even flaunt their PhD to prove they're no dummy. My mother used to say that going to school doesn't make anyone smart. I never understood that. In fact, it's something that I fought in life with. I tried to get an understanding of it. I never, unfortunately, and now I understand what she meant. We have the proof right under our eyes. People who claim to have college degree, some a PhD, and yet making decisions that even an uneducated individual shouldn't make. Now I understand that a school education doesn't make you smart. A college education doesn't make anyone smart. In fact, look at Donald Trump. You can say with all fairness that Donald Trump was given his diploma, because there is nothing about Donald Trump that shows he has any, even an average, even an 8th grader type of intelligence. But he's very street smart. He's able to con millions of people in the United States of America to become the 45th president. That is a serious problem for the United States. We always talk about politicians deceiving people, but this is not politics. That's pure deception. No one can take what Donald Trump has done as politics. No one can put what Republicans did during the past 2 years as politics. Those are pure deception. And there is a big difference. Remember, I gave you the example earlier when we were discussing race relation. The very people that always claim to have this level of integrity, this level of decency, those are the same people that were doing the most Machiavellian action. Yes, that seems to run in the Republican Party. They're doing all the wrong things, but they claim to be patriots. They claim to be Christian. Remember the uproar, the noise. Christian, evangelical Christian were up in arms, screaming at the top of their lungs of Bill Clinton having an affair in the Oval Office. My God, the world about to end. That's how upset, how outraged they were. And come Donald Trump. Oh, they have no problem. You know, he's a nice man. He speaks properly. He does everything right. Hey, what kind of problem should we have with him? Yes, the very people watch for them. The very people that are claiming to be usually are not. The Christian conservative, they just like the label. And I mentioned it before, and I wrote about it several times. Republicans love label. Great label. Patriots, they do not even flinch to sell the country to the highest bidder, but they are patriots. Look at the Republican the past 2 years and tell me which one of them stood for the country when Donald Trump was all over the place in bed with Russia. Which one of them did? In fact, the very people placed in position to help steer the country back in the right direction, people like Devin Nunes, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Trey Gowdy, Chuck Grassley, they all were in the same boat with Donald Trump destroying the United States of America. Yes, the very people who always claim to be decent, the very people who always claim to be patriot, they were the same people who in a heartbeat sold the country. Which brings me to this. In the history of the United States, Russia, the Soviet Union then, tried several times to reach out to individuals who aspire to become president. They did. At least 3 times that we know of. And the latest was with JFK. That was Nikita Khrushchev. Nikita Khrushchev was at that time president of Russia. He didn't like Nixon because he had a fallout with Nixon. They had a conversation. He didn't like the way the conversation ended. So he wanted to side with JFK. He wanted JFK to accept his help in order to defeat Richard Nixon. JFK politely refused. And that was an account by a Russian, not by JFK team that says he politely refused. That was writing from an individual from Russia who knew the whole story. He was at that time writing about a particular KGB agent right here in the United States whose job was to keep an eye on things and reach out when necessary. That was the last time that Russia tried to reach, and all 3 times, interestingly enough, they tried to reach Democrats, and all 3 times Democrats refused. Donald Trump was not the only individual Russia reached to in 2016. You remember NRA, all the everywhere that there were the Republicans were there was presence, Republican presence. It was easy for Russia to infiltrate because they opened the door. Yes, when you hear the Republicans claim to be patriot, most likely they're not. They're selling the country, and they have proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. So Donald Trump, it's easy to point fingers to Donald Trump because he is the man at the top. But Republicans in general have proven the past 2 years to also be for sale to any high bidder. I'm still waiting to hear what the Republican delegation to Russia, what they went there for, what did they accomplish? We still don't know. We still don't know what Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin talked about during 5 meetings behind closed doors. Yes, our country is in serious jeopardy. We have the greatest conman in the Oval Office. But much worse, in the legislative branch, we have Republicans who are also sold to the highest bidder. Russia wants to help, we open, as long as that help to keep our job, because that's the only thing Republican legislators seems to be concerned about, keeping their job at any cost. The idea of taking an oath to uphold the Constitution is a joke for Republicans. They always bash Democrats as being unpatriot. They're not Christian. They're not fiscally conservative. You start seeing the pattern. Everything that they blame Democrats for, they actually live that life. What has Democrat done that makes them unpatriotic? But we can point to what Republicans have done that makes them unpatriotic. Democrats are unchristian because they support LGBT. Republicans are Christian because they don't support LGBT, and yet their actions, unbelievable. They like corruption. They live in corruption. They support corruption. But they are Christian because that label sounds nice, Christian. Yes, the United States of America is in serious jeopardy. Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of the country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? I do thank you for spending the time with me, and I hope this was interesting. If you have any questions, suggestions, comments, criticism, do not hesitate to contact us. Should you have a topic you would like us to talk about, let us know. We'll research it and we will debate it right here. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Hope to see you again tomorrow at 2 p.m. The Fourth Branch Podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchenne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day. Join me here on the Fourth Branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the Fourth Branch. Common sense in a world of chaos. This program will resume in just a moment.